Welcome to You Defend It with Rob Kilmer. The phone number to call into the show is 772-1290. As always, callers to the show will need to take a position, be able to defend it with an argument that is factual, not emotional. And if you can't make your point without insulting someone, you can't make your point on this show. Callers and guests will be treated with complete respect. For my part, I will ask questions that matter and give people the opportunity to answer. My website is www.youdefendit.com. That's youdefendit.com. You can give me your comments on the show anytime. By Friday of each week, I will have the topics up for the coming show. You can also visit my blog through the site, and you can read my posts and leave your own. The lineup for the Sunday talk shows will also be posted there on Saturdays. You can also listen to my show live on streaming audio on www.wnbf.com, and my show is uploaded to youdefendit.com later on Saturdays. You can listen to it from there if you missed it live. Okay, this week we're going to be talking about oral argument and why I am using that as the format for the debates that I am pursuing. But first, I want to address something from last week. Last week I was talking about Congress's idea to slap a 90% tax on bonuses paid to AIG employees by AIG. I said I thought it was illegal as a retroactive law. I also said it constituted an illegal bill of attainder. A caller, Lucas, said that retroactive taxes had been upheld by the courts in the past. I said I would check. I did. He's right. Congress has passed and the Supreme Court has upheld retroactive tax increases several times. Lucas specifically referenced Bill Clinton's 1993 tax increase, and he was right about that as well. So you can pass laws that raise taxes retroactively, or remove. Some of the research I saw involved cases where deductions were removed retroactively, which has the net effect of raising your taxes. I want to quickly, before I get on to today's topic, go through what a bill of attainder is. I did not really get into that last week as thoroughly as I should have. A bill of attainder is a law that targets a certain group or a certain person, and the best definition I found came from a case from the Supreme Court. The case was Cummings versus Missouri. It was in 1867, and the Supreme Court then defined a bill of attainder as follows. A bill of attainder is a legislative act which inflicts punishment without judicial trial and includes any legislative act which takes away the life, liberty, or property of a particular named or easily ascertainable person or group of persons because the legislature thinks them guilty of conduct which deserves punishment. That's AIG. I think that precisely describes what is intended with respect to retroactively taxing at the rate of 90% bonuses paid to AIG employees. I believe that is a bill of attainder, and I think it's illegal. But on the issue of whether or not an ex post facto law, as prohibited in the Constitution, applies when discussing retroactive tax increases, Lucas was absolutely right. Okay, this week I want to talk about why it is that the format I am proposing for my debates is that which you would see in a courtroom. In other words, that which you would see at oral argument. And just briefly, you have trial courts and then you have appellate courts. In the trial courts, not surprisingly, that's where you have your trials, witnesses and things like that. However, sometimes in the trial courts, you make a motion before the court, and each side will argue a specific point of law without witnesses or many times without clients there. In fact, locally in the Supreme Court, they're all done one day a month. Each judge has their own motion day, and you may show up. There'll be 30 or 40 lawyers there. And they each have some issue before the court that they want resolved that is not part of the trial itself, but will have something to do with the way the trial is conducted, or some issue that's arisen in the portion of the trial, in the discovery portion of the case. And you stand up and you argue your point, and the other side argues their point. This is preceded by briefs to the court, where you point out, you argue to the court your interpretation of the law, and obviously the interpretation of the law you want the court to adopt. When you do an appeal, appeals courts don't hear trials. They don't take testimony from witnesses. They don't do anything like that. Appeals courts hear nothing but oral arguments from lawyers. Sometimes they'll settle a case without having oral argument. They'll do it just on the brief submitted, but if the lawyers appear, it's never with witnesses, never testimony, anything like that. No new evidence. It is just oral argument with the lawyers. Having said that, let's talk about the debates. And when I say the debates right now, I mean the debates that I'm pursuing. And I also want to talk about what we hear on a daily basis on cable or from our elected representatives. The most common complaint I hear from people when I talk to them about debates that have occurred is that the people don't answer the questions. And when you think about that, that's kind of amazing. And it does. It happens all the time. People will be asked a question at a debate, and it's hugely prevalent on the Sunday talk shows. Moderator asks somebody a question. What they get in the form of an answer isn't an answer at all. It's usually some sort of emotional argument. It's some criticism of the other side. It's a history lesson. It has nothing to do with the question that was asked. The one that drives me the craziest is when somebody is asked, well, what would you do? What's your plan for this situation? And the answer is, well, let me tell you what I won't do. That's a pretty straightforward non-answer. And it occurs to me that there's a pretty good reason why people don't do it, why they don't actually answer the questions. And we're going to take a break now, but when we get back, we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about how I think implementing a format similar to that of oral argument in a courtroom would make the debates a whole lot more valuable and remove most, if not all, of the nonsense that we've been subjected to so far. You are listening to You Defend It with Rob Kilmer right here on News Radio 1290 WMBF Binghamton. Welcome back to You Defend It with Rob Kilmer. The phone number to call into the show is 772-1290. By the way, a little programming note, and I guess at this point, for the foreseeable future, it will be this way. There is no more Paul Harvey show or a substitute for Paul Harvey or Paul Harvey Jr. at 8:30. We'll just be going straight through that time. Okay, we left off talking about debates and why I think that the oral argument format is preferable to what we have. Right now, on talk shows, during the debates we see during the presidential season, on the news, on cable, people are asked questions and they don't answer them. The logical question there is, why don't they answer them? And it's not because they don't have to, although they don't. They're not made to. But that's not the reason they don't answer them. It's because they don't want to. That's not what they see the purpose of their appearance being, to answer that question. That's not why they're there. They take questions and use it in a manner that best helps them get to their base. It's just a vehicle for them. That's all it is. It's a science. It's an art. There are people who are very skilled at taking questions as springboards and nothing else. No intention of ever answering it. And we have tolerated it for so long that it has become the way in which these questions are handled. It's what we've almost come to expect. So somebody gets a question, and what do they do with it? Sometimes they attack the question itself. Sometimes they simply preemptively take apart what they expect the opponent to say. That's the "I'll tell you what I'm not going to do" response. I'm not going to do what my counterpart is going to tell you should be done. And we accept that, or have accepted it until now. My position is times have changed. Things are more serious now than they used to be. We can't tolerate this theater anymore. That's why my debates will take the form of oral argument. Oral argument is this. You come to the court with an issue to be decided. You send the court in advance a written version of your arguments. That gives the court an opportunity to understand them and formulate questions related directly to your argument. And you've got to be ready to answer those questions. You are not allowed to veer, to denigrate, or to divert. When a judge says to you, "Well, what about this?" If you were to start off with, "Well, let me tell you about the problems I see with the other side's argument," judge would say to you, "What do you think you're doing? I didn't ask you about the other side. I didn't ask you anything other than what I asked you. Get back to it now and answer it now." And judges do that not because they're impatient or belligerent or in the practice of abusing authority. They do it because it's their job. It's a little more solemn in a courtroom than it is on MSNBC. The judge has to make a decision. And that judge wants to get it right. Now, the judge wants to get it right because it matters. Because people's lives are affected. Because there are consequences when a judge puts pen to paper with the words "so ordered." It has real-life meaning for real people. The lawyer's job is to get their best argument before the court. You know why? Because it matters. Because people's lives are affected. Because there are consequences when a judge puts pen to paper with the words "so ordered." The debates that occur in court are serious and disciplined. It's the only way to resolve issues. You have to put your best argument forward for your position. You have to defend it. You have to persuade somebody you're right. That's the way it should be. We have become a country that is content with accepting, with good complaints. We are content with hearing somebody challenge the other person's position without defending their own. Somehow we can watch that, and when the show's over, say, that was pretty good. It wasn't. It was useless, because we still have the problem. Whatever the issue was, has not been resolved by deciding what not to do. In other words, by deciding not to accept somebody else's solution, you've not taken one step towards resolving whatever issue it is you're talking about. Think about this. Lawyers and judges treat issues with the respect they deserve. The lawyers do it out of a sense of responsibility to their client. Judges do it out of a sense of duty to the public. That's their job. Everybody does their job. Why is it that we don't feel we owe ourselves and the American public the same duty? Why do we allow these endless, nonsensical debates to go forward? Why don't we treat our very futures as Americans as importantly as we would treat a jaywalking ticket in city court? Because I will tell you this, a judge in city court deciding whether there is requisite proof to determine if you rolled through a stop sign will insist on more honesty and focus than we get when our leaders debate a $4 trillion economy or killing people on a large scale. That's what it's come to. The debates that take place on cable and during campaigns are a tragic disgrace. They are beneath the issues themselves. They are beneath the people whose lives are affected by them. How many Americans today even know what it is that is afflicting the banks? These toxic assets. That's a phrase maybe 30% of the public can repeat. Credit default swaps. Anybody know what those are? Derivatives. Anybody? No? Hardly anybody does. The way I run this show, when I'm going to talk about a particular issue, is to do my best to take as objectively as I can, and it's hard, but I try. Facts. And I'll say this is a fact, I believe, regarding this issue. These are the facts. This is what this is. For instance, today, a bill of attainder. Last week, a caller, Lucas's good question, good point, I should say. He wasn't questioning anything. He was pretty certain about what he was talking about, and he was absolutely right. Prompted me to look into something, so that by this week, I get it right. I'll explain something more thoroughly to start the conversation when I can, because it's the only way to do it. That's why ordinarily on this show we start out with me reading from some different articles. I try and find the most objective information I can. And I'll tell you what I do. I take articles and I'll cut them and I'll paste them. I'll take them off the web. I'll take them from Fox. I'll take them from CNN. I'll take them from Bloomberg. I'll take them from a million different places. I'll take the article, I'll cut it, and I'll paste it. Then I'll go through what I pasted and cut out everything that I think is opinion. So that what I give to you to start a discussion on this show is as close to fact as I can come. Where is that in America today? Where is that professionalism? Not that I'm not trying to say that I'm the only one demonstrating any professionalism. What I'm saying is shows like Hardball, shows like Hannity, all these shows on both sides. They should start out with, these are the facts as best we can determine them. And certainly people argue over the facts, but you can start somewhere. And you have an obligation to at least try. The shows should start with this. This is tonight's topic. The banking problem. Toxic assets. This is what they are. This was created by. It's a little harder to do it, and sometimes it's a little less exciting. But it's more informative, and it's, in my view, what you deserve. Why get up in the morning with the intention of misleading? Why come to work, if it's a radio station, with the intention of getting over on somebody? Where's your self-respect? I am an attorney, and what I said last week about the application of the constitutional prohibition against ex post facto laws, I believed would render these 90% taxes on these AIG bonuses illegal. Somebody called in with a different idea on that. He was right. I was wrong. That simple. What is the point of telling you otherwise? When I was looking that up, there came a point where I kind of smiled because I had to say to myself, I can't defend it. That's the whole show. Either you defend it or you don't. I cannot defend the proposition that retroactive tax increases are prohibited by the Constitution, because they're not. They are clearly not. And I refuse to defend it when I know I can't. Because if I can't, I shouldn't. I give you the best information I can. Where is that everywhere else? Where is the show that starts with, these are the facts everybody agrees on? There is no such show. These talk shows that start out with interviews. There's no setup. Unless the interviewee is there to give objective information, there's no setup. You're going straight to opinion. Well, what is it you're giving your opinion on if you haven't shown your listeners or your viewers the respect of laying out the facts for them in an honest way? Even if that means setting forth the facts in a way that really doesn't favor you. That's life. That's the way it goes. You win some, you lose some. People's unwillingness to admit mistakes has led to some of the more tragic things that have ever happened in this world. We've seen it in the last few years. An unwillingness to admit mistakes prolongs the consequences of the mistake. Lawyers, the legal system, take a lot of grief. However, at its core, the court system is in the business of resolving disputes, and it has rules, rigid rules. In fact, we have something called sanctions, which are fines, which are punishments, they're penalties. One of the ways you can earn yourself a sanction is to put forth an argument that you know you can't defend. That's against the rules, believe it or not. And when I say believe it or not, I say that because we've been conditioned to think that it's okay to argue something you don't believe in as long as you can convince somebody. It's not how it works in the court system. Because the court system has to do what the media never has to do, which is come up with a result, come up with a decision, do something that has real life consequences. It's not enough to give your opinion and walk away. That's not how it works in court. Every issue has to be disposed of. Why do we not treat the issues of our time, war, the economy, social issues, big things, value things? We don't talk to our kids about rolling through a stop sign. We talk to them about what America stands for. We talk to them about being an American. We talk to them about right and wrong. Why do we tolerate, then, a system in public that treats those issues less seriously than a code violation? If you've got the answer to that, you're one up on me. People cry, litigants cry over court decisions. People are on pins and needles waiting for decisions from judges. Many times the issues they're waiting to hear on will be fleeting in the overall scheme of things. I've been an attorney for 16 years now. I do what every other attorney does when I get a written decision in the mail. I go to the last page first and read it. My heart is usually pounding. That's where you get so ordered. That's where you get what the court has actually decided. And if you get a favorable outcome, you gleefully read the first few pages. If you get an unfavorable outcome, you take a few minutes, and then you read it. But your heart's in your throat. Because somebody's actual life is going to be affected. Well, how is that different? Except that it's on a smaller scale than the issues we're talking about. You know somebody who's lost a job now, or had their hours cut, or has lost a significant share of their savings, at least on paper, in the stock market. You know those people. You may be those people. And yet, we arrive at these points with these consequences in America unfolding on a daily basis without any meaningful discussion ahead of time. We get 3 debates every 4 years with moderators who know the people involved, who don't insist ever. To my knowledge, I've never heard a moderator say, "Stop. You're off track. You're off point. I didn't ask you that. Get back to it. The people have a right to know." Doesn't happen. You know, I watch The Godfather. Whenever it's on, I'll watch The Godfather. I love that movie. The book was even better. There are lines in the book that aren't in the movie that are better than anything in the movie. But there's a scene near the end of the first Godfather where Marlon Brando stands up in the meeting with all the other families and says, "How did it ever get this far?" I wonder that all the time. I go from cable station to cable station. I watch the news. And I think, how did it ever get this far? How did we get so far off? How did we get so far away from what we as intelligent Americans who care about our country should be demanding in the way of answers? It's pro wrestling. It's entertainment. It's all it is. Everybody's got a book. Everybody puts out a book. Obama's already got a book deal for when he leaves. Bush is putting out a book. Glenn Beck's got a book out. Sean Hannity's got books out. Olbermann's I think he's got a book out. If he doesn't, he will. In the meantime, we don't have anything. It'll be like turning the Titanic, I admit. But it can happen. We need to guide this country back to meaningful discussion of the issues that matter. Marlene is on the phone. Marlene, can you hear me?
I sure can. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Hi. I'd like to just make a comment and add a different comment about the 90% tax that I don't hear the public talking about, and that would be I'd like to see a retroactive tax go on our federal congressmen and senators for failure of their report card for not serving us in the last 40 years, especially the lifers that are in there time after time after time, that are there for life. And that's got to end as well. We have to limit their terms. If they can't do it in 2 terms, they're out. And no more life health insurance benefits for them and their families. They're taking it all away from us so they can give it back just like they're demanding the AIG executives. That has got to change. And it's been that way since the 60s when we've been all captivated by the kingdom of Camelot, when the media is just so, I don't know, they just want to pull the rug over our eyes, and we have to not take it laying down anymore. That's all I have to say. Thanks for your show.
Well, thanks for calling in.
Yep, bye-bye.
You know, it is kind of funny that the people right now who are claiming that both sides, you know, what about these deficits? They've run them up. AIG didn't run up the deficit. They did. They spend more money every year than the year before, with the exception of possibly 1 or 2 years in the 90s. I don't know if Bill Clinton ever paid off any part of the debt. I think he did. I don't know. They'd never paid it off. They'd never paid the bill. So Marlene's got a point there. I mean, they to some extent, they haven't performed the fundamental aspect of their job, which is to run the finances of this country in a responsible way. And I'll tell you, I believe, and I will make certain of this, but there's some sort of pension benefit that goes with being a congressman, even if it's just if you're in for one term. I believe you get a pension. I don't think there's a 10-year vesting or anything like that. I think if you're in for one full term, and if you're a congressman as opposed to a senator, that's just 2 years. I think there are some benefits you do get for life. Okay, we're going to go to commercial and come back and finish up this discussion of what we get in this country versus what I think Americans deserve. You are listening to You Defend It with Rob Kilmer right here on News Radio 1290 WNBF Binghamton. Welcome back to You Defend It with Rob Kilmer. The phone number to call into the show is 772-1290. I left off talking about, Congress, actually, and what they get for life. But I want to get back to the courts and how I think that our debates, our public debates, should be similar, identical to the way arguments are handled in court. I was thinking during this past break of a case I was involved in recently, where a judge said out loud, "I don't want to decide this case. It's hard. This one's close. It's 50-50 almost." I thought that was a remarkable thing for him to say. I thought that was a remarkably good thing for him to say under the circumstances. And then he said, "But I have to make a decision. So here it is." You get resolution that way. You get progress. You get finality. You get a way forward. Which is exactly what you don't get in the media. I hate that phrase, the media. Everybody uses it. That's what you don't get with cable, with pundits, with everything else that goes on out there right now. You don't get it. Because they don't have to come up with an answer, because we don't make them. They don't have to come up with a defense of their position, because we don't make them. My goal is for there to come a time when we look back on the era of when debates ran wild and nobody addressed anything. Nobody was made to answer a question. Nobody was made to defend their own position. I want that to be referred to like this. Do you remember when? Like that. Do you remember when talk shows didn't make people answer questions? Do you remember that? Do you remember how ridiculous that was? Do you remember what we got for that, which was nothing? Can you believe that we had presidential debates at one point in our history where the people who were vying for the most important job, arguably on the planet, were not made to answer the questions that were put to them? Do you remember that? Can you believe we allowed that? What were we thinking? That's what I want. And that's what I'm shooting for. I have made some progress on my debates. I've made a commitment not to announce anything on this show until I can defend it, until I could say, all right, this is in place. But trust me, not only am I pursuing these debates, but I'm making some progress. And again, maybe 6 months, maybe 2 years, maybe next week. But I'll keep you posted as I go and let you know when I have something concrete, whether it's a meeting, I'll let you know about that. I want you in on the process. I think it's interesting. I've learned a lot. Getting in to see people is the hardest part. No question about it. My argument with Rush Limbaugh helped. It helped me considerably. And it is on that basis right now that I've got a couple things moving forward. And the irony here is that the only way for me to pursue a debate format that bypasses people like Rush Limbaugh is to get into an argument with Rush Limbaugh. It's hard to reconcile that, but that's the way it went. But I want the people who listen to this show to be part of the process and follow this as it goes forward. I can tell you right now, the process so far, since I announced this idea, has been taking letters, hand-delivering them to major networks. I thought I had Lou Dobbs and Geraldo Rivera, who both agreed, whose representatives both agreed in principle to debating right up until they got my rules. Then they were both gone. And I'm, at this point, talking to some people who, some are in the media right now. One who I may or may not be talking to. I thought I would be. We did not connect this past week. Worked in the White House under George Bush. And when I meet with somebody, I will tell you about it. And I'll tell you where the process goes. There's no reason. It's another thing I'm a little tired of. People love to be secretive about everything. It is the most bizarre thing in the world to me. Nobody wants to. People like the attention of, the mystery that surrounds the simplest things. They want ordinary announcements to become an event. I've never understood it. You're running for office? I haven't made any decisions yet. What are you talking about? Of course you have. Are you running or not? Yeah, I want to run. Why not say, yeah, I want to run? Have you thought about running for office? Absolutely. I want that job. I'd be good at it. I don't know if I can pull it off. I don't know if I can pull off the campaign. I don't know if it's the right time for me, my family, whatever. But you never hear anybody answer that question that way. Are you running for this job? You want to be president? You going to run for senator? No decisions. We'll make a decision when it's appropriate. They've already made the decision. Why mislead about that? On this show, I will tell you what's been going on as soon as something has happened. I don't want to announce things that have not yet happened that I think are going to happen, or people I'm going to meet with. But when I do, I'll tell you I met with them, and we'll go from there. But this past week, as I was looking at the coverage of the AIG fiasco, I came to conclude even more so than last week that it is a fiasco. This isn't about bonuses. There was a fascinating letter or op-ed piece in the New York Times this week by a person who announced that he was quitting AIG, an executive, and why he was quitting. And it was fascinating to get to get his perspective on it. I believe his name was DeSantis. And he had been asked to stay on for $1 salary plus a bonus to wind down AIG. Now, when AIG took money from the government, the deal was it would be paid back. And it wasn't going to be paid back out of net profits. It was to be paid back when certain divisions of AIG were sold. This guy was one of the people who was in charge of getting one of AIG's divisions in shape to sell. In other words, to pay back the American public. He did so for $1 plus a retention bonus, meaning he was told months, if not a year ago, if you stay on and do this for us, it's kind of hard to sell off something when it's likely going to mean the end of your own job. What is your incentive to stay? At the same time, AIG's got an obligation to pay back the American taxpayer. So this guy took it on. Said, I'll do it. I'll do it for $1 and a bonus. I'll stay on, and then I know I'll have to find a job when this is over. And for that, he got what? Vilified by everybody, including the guy who asked him to stay on. The head of AIG, Liddy. It's nice to get a different perspective. It's easy to say the people at AIG who got bonuses should be named and shamed, which I believe is a fairly accurate paraphrasing of Andrew Cuomo. That's easy. Anybody can do that. Words are not hard. Now, looking deeper and understanding the actual facts of the people who got bonuses, particularly when that may detract from some of the anger, that's a little harder. So people don't do it as often. But the fact of the matter is, most of the people who received bonuses from AIG were not in any way associated with those parts of AIG that engaged in the credit default swaps that cost so much money. I may be mangling that phrase myself. They knew they were going to lose their job in an industry that is shedding jobs. So, think that through. Not only are you staying on for a year, but you know that by doing so, it'll be that much harder to get a job. A year from now, in that sector, there will be that many fewer jobs. Yet, the American government wanted some of that money paid back, and this was the way to do it. Get people to stay on, to sell those assets belonging to AIG. What's the problem? Well, it's easier to demagogue it. It's easier to inflame people over it than to talk to them about it. Okay, that's going to do it for me. We will be back next week. Thanks for listening, and next week we'll go to a more specific topic. This week I wanted to get back into the debates. Thanks for listening, and you can visit my website, www.youdefendit.com, to give me your comments and to see the topics for next week's show. We'll see you then.